What is up, everybody? Maybe no hat. What is up, everybody? My name is Jesse. This is No Flippin' Secrets. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how I invested money from my first deal to get my second deal, along with all of the mistakes that I made along the way. I'm going to reveal exactly where I moved every dollar that I made from my first deal in order to get my second deal, and things that weren't even related to getting my second deal. Just transparency. But first, if you haven't seen my first video on how I made $20,000 my first month out of high school wholesaling real estate, I'll leave that video down in the description so you can watch that and you can understand everything that's going on in this video. You might have also seen the video I made with Maximillian Dier. I'll leave that video in the description on how I got my second deal wholesaling real estate. That's kind of what this video is about, but I'm going to be a little more strategic and planned. I'm going to lay everything out for you, exactly what I did. There will be no flipping secrets in this video.
But before we get into the video, I wholesale nationwide, but my primary market is here in Colorado. So if you've got a deal in Colorado you're looking to dispo, you could shoot me a text at 806-603-3220. Or you could send me an email at noflippinsecrets@gmail.com. Again, that's 806-603-3220. Or you could send me an email at noflippinsecrets@gmail.com. Now, let's get back into the video.
So let me back up a little bit. Throughout high school, I didn't have my license or a car. I only had my permit. So getting this deal, I wanted to buy a car. My dad had bought a car months prior. It was an Audi A4 that he bought to wrap because he owns a wrap company, and he was going to flip that car and make some money. But instead, he let me buy it off of him and gave me a little bit of a discount because recently it was my birthday and also I just graduated. So my first big expense was my car, and that was $1,500. And in all transparency, I made $20,000, but really in the end, I made $18,500. And here's why. With my first deal, it ended up being a double closing. And basically what that means is I buy the property first, and then I sell it to my investor next. There's an A to B contract and then a B to C contract. But obviously, I'm not buying the property myself because I'm 18 years old. So you use what's called pass-through funding, where you use the investor's money to cover your cost, and then whatever your assignment fee above that is. The only issue with this is typically during a double closing, there's two sets of closing costs because you're closing on it not once, but twice. Once with you and the seller, and then the other with you and the buyer, where at that time, you then become the seller. I made it very clear to the title company, and I showed them text that every single part of closing costs, whether it's from the A to B file or the B to C file, everything would be covered by the end buyer. My mistake was that I chose the wrong title company, a title company that doesn't deal with a lot of wholesale transactions, and they really didn't help me out in this process. In the end, I had to pay the first set of closing costs because in my contract, it says that the buyer pays all closing costs. And at that time, I'm the buyer. So for all transparency, my assignment fee was not $20,000. It was $18,500. Although my HUD statement says that I bought it for $135 and sold it at $155. Choose your title company wisely. And I'll elaborate even more later. So as you can see, I started with $18,500. And then my fixed expense was a car, which was $1,500. Next, I had to pay for insurance. And as an 18-year-old with no driving history, my insurance was expensive. I had an Audi. It was $3,000 for 6 months. So about $500 a month, which is ridiculous. So I've got the car that was $1,500 and I have insurance that was $3,000 for 6 months. And I shouldn't forget to mention, right when I got the money, the first thing that I did was I gave $2,000 as an offering to my church. So then this is what I have so far. Although maybe I should put the tithe and offering above because that's what I spent the money on first. Besides that, I'm happy to say that I didn't really have any other expenses as I still lived with my dad, which I'm grateful for. So those were the expenses that I kind of had to get out of the way first that didn't have anything to do with the business. I know it's tough for other people to use the money the same way that I did because I had more freedom to spend that money because I didn't have to pay for rent or anything like that. But in all transparency, I'm just showing exactly how I spent the money. From that point on, I really wanted to get into PPL. I was watching a lot of Maximillian Dier's videos, and he was talking about iSpeed to Lead, which is a PPL provider. And if you're not familiar with PPL, basically that means that a cold caller will call a homeowner, or a homeowner will enter something on a website saying, I want to sell my house. Then wholesalers like you and I are able to purchase those leads of people who already are motivated to sell. So instead of doing what I did in the beginning, which was skip tracing all these numbers and calling every homeowner individually to see if they wanted to sell, I can handpick leads of homeowners that are already wanting to sell. And I could see different things like the home type, the bed, bath, square footage, where exactly it is. I can see their motivation. If someone called them, I can see the AI call summary. So I knew that it was going to help out a lot more than me just cold calling people. So at that point, I purchased a package on iSpeed to Lead called Maverick Mode. So this is the package that I bought, Maverick Mode. It cost $3,000. I think this is almost exactly the same package that I bought, although I think I might have gotten a little bit more money in the money and bonus balance. So you can see my expense, $3,000 for iSpeed to Lead, just the Maverick Mode. On iSpeed to Lead, I also purchased Coupon Club, which if you're not familiar with that, it basically gives you leads at more of a discount. So instead of other leads being $200 or $300, I can get non-exclusive leads for $29 a piece. And then instead of exclusive leads being $300 or $400, I can get every single exclusive lead for $200 a piece, which means that nobody else has that lead, at least on iSpeed to Lead. That doesn't mean that homeowners aren't entering something on somebody else's website and other people are getting those same leads. It just means that on that software, nobody has the lead that I have. So that ended up costing me $200 a month, which was worth it because I would have easily spent that $200 on one lead if I didn't have Coupon Club. And if you're still confused about iSpeed to Lead or PPL in general, Maximillian Dier also has videos on PPL that you can watch that he kind of lays out everything for you. I forgot to mention 2 fixed expenses. I also had to set aside money for taxes and also pay my dad, which I told him that I would if the deal closed, and it did. So I have $2,000 in taxes because it was written in my dad's personal name, so he wasn't able to really write off anything. It's going to be more than that, but he was just giving me $2,000 because it was my first deal, basically. And then I have $1,500 that I promised I would give my dad if the deal closed. I then also purchased XLeads, which is a software where you can comp properties and things like that, kind of like Batch Leads or PropStream, but I like it way better because it has free unlimited skip tracing, which I don't know if any other software has, but I know XLeads is big on it. And I got the X plan, which costed $229 per month, which also gave me 60,000 downloads in case I wanted to cold call people myself. So you can see that $249 for X leads every month. So far I have 2 subscriptions, which is Coupon Club for $200 a month, and then X leads for $249 a month, which brings a grand total of my monthly costs at $449 a month. I'm running out of space here. But I think to my knowledge, if I'm remembering everything correctly, that's all I spent all of my money on. That brings me to $5,051 left about. And that money I can use for the subscriptions and also gas or anything that I needed, as well as a little bit of fun money for me. We had just moved into a new house, so I ended up buying some stuff for my room or my office or anything like that. It's just stuff that I wanted. At that point, I knew that I had all my bases covered. I knew that I had enough money to get my next deal, so I had kind of the rest of the money that I can just use for myself. That's not financial advice, but that's just how I use the money. Now I can finally get into how I got my second deal. My second deal came shortly after I bought iSpeed to Lead, and it was a fixed price mode lead, which means it just came into my CRM. It just came directly to me right when the lead came in. So I kind of had first dibs on it. It was a lead down in Denver, Colorado, and I was only about a 30-minute drive away. So me and my dad then decided to drive over to the property. And at this point, my dad was convinced that wholesaling was a real business and that he could make some money too. So he joined as my partner, which meant now I didn't have to give him $1,500. I had to give him 50%. I'm just kidding. This deal probably wouldn't have closed if it weren't for him. When we got the lead, we called the guy and he said that he had the property and there was no real comps, and he told us his number and it was $600,000. We decided to drive down to the place to see really if there is any comps because this guy lived in Florida. He hadn't been there in a couple of years. Maybe there's some comps that he just doesn't know about. We get there, we drive around the neighborhood, and really there is absolutely no comps. The only comp that I could really find was the house right next to his that his father also built. His father built the house that he was selling and then the house right next to it. And the house right next to it sold for $600,000 in 2018. So a long time ago, can't really use as a comp. But him saying he wanted $600,000 and the best comp was right next to his, and that sold 7 years ago at $600,000, I knew that I might have something that I could work with. And let me tell you, it was almost impossible to find other comps for this property. And it was so hard to find a buyer because of that. All the houses in that neighborhood were 50s and 60s houses that were just brick, one story, and this was a two-story house. It wasn't brick. It was kind of an oddball for the neighborhood. The guy told us that it was currently rented and that the tenants were on month to month and they could move if we wanted them to. So we ended up scheduling a time, I think in the next 2 or 3 days, where we went down to the property, the tenant let us in, and we were able to take all the pictures that we needed to see the condition of the house. And it was honestly in pretty good condition. The tenants took pretty good care of it. It was a regular landlord house where maybe it needed some carpet in some places, maybe it needed some paint, landscaping, things like that. But what I loved was that the bathrooms were all great. They were nice. The kitchens were nice. They were all updated. So that was something that we didn't have to do. And things like kitchens and bathrooms are really what sells houses. So we didn't need to put any of that work into it. It would kind of just raise the value for us. We ended up calculating the cost that it would take to fix the place up, and we thought that it would take about $50,000 to $60,000 in work. I also had an investor friend of mine who's also a contractor come by, and he said, yeah, it probably needs about 50 and 60. And then there's a landscaper guy that we know, and he said that the landscaping would be at about 12,000. So total about $50,000 to $60,000 in work. We ended up coming with ARV right around $800,000. So if you use the 90% rule, which let me show you. The 90% rule basically says whatever the ARV of a house is, you times that by 0.9. And then from that, you minus repairs times 2. So we thought that repairs were about 50 to 60. Let's call it 60. So minus 120,000 if you multiply that by 2. Whatever that cost is, that's what an investor will pay for it. That brought us to a grand total of $600,000 that we can pay for the house. The guy wanted $600,000, which was a fair number, but I knew there was a little bit of room to negotiate, so we told him $575,000. If he accepted at $575 and we sold it at $600, we would be able to make $25,000. So that's exactly what we did. We called him when we said, hey, I know you're at $600,000, but we really need to be at $575,000. He told me on the phone, he said, hey, I really like that offer. Let's do it. Send me a contract. And by the way, the whole reason this guy was selling was because him and his wife got divorced. And per their divorce decree, they had to sell the house within 90 days or the wife could sue him or something like that for not selling the house because she was on the deed to the home or she was on the title to the home. So they needed to get her off of the title. She got a house and he got a house. This was his house. That 90 days was almost up, so he kind of had to take the offer or he might get sued by his ex-wife. That all turned out to be pretty good for us because it gave us a little bit more leverage later on, and I'll explain that. I sent him over the contract. He signed it. I signed it. But the wife or the ex-wife was not signing it for like 2 weeks. So I'm calling this guy and I'm saying, hey, what's going on? Why isn't the wife signing the document? Why isn't she signing this agreement? And he's like, that's just how she is. She's crazy. She's just trying to, like, she's taking so long with her attorney to review everything, but I'll try to get her to sign it. Eventually, out of nowhere, and I've never talked to this lady, she calls me and she says, hey, I haven't signed everything because I need this in the document. And basically what she needed in the agreement was that all of the money that comes from the sale goes to the husband. She doesn't get anything off of it. And all payments or liens or anything like that be paid from him and not her. And that makes sense. It makes sense why she would take so long because she needed to write all of that up to protect herself. In talking to her, I realized she's a lot more of a nicer lady than I thought that she was, just based on what the ex-husband was telling me. She ended up telling me that the ex-husband really was the bad guy. She said that somehow in the past, when they were married, he took her off the title to their house. And so she didn't get any money from the house. He sold it and then just left and took all the money from the house and stole money from her. So I was like, this guy is actually the bad guy in the situation. But this whole time, the wife told us, do not tell him that you're in contact with me because I want to help you guys as much as you can, get every single penny that you can out of this guy because he's the worst. Typical divorce behavior. Again, she wasn't getting any money out of it, so whatever money that we agreed to, she didn't get anything. So honestly, she could care less about what price we got. She wanted us to squeeze every nickel and dime that we could out of him. Eventually, when we put all that in the document, she ended up signing and we sent it over to the title company. At that time, we're looking on Facebook, which is how I got my first deal, how I found a buyer for my first deal on Facebook. We're looking on Facebook to find buyers for this deal. We're texting people, calling people, showing people pictures of the house, and nobody was biting. And the reason was because there was no comps. So people really didn't want to buy a house if they didn't know that it could sell at a certain price. They didn't want to be the first one to test out the price. They wanted to know for certain that they were going to be able to sell the house at $800,000. And while I spent a ton of time analyzing this deal and I came up with the ARV of $800,000, other people didn't see comps, so they kind of just passed it on, which is fine. I knew that it was going to be a little difficult to find a buyer, but it was really difficult to find a buyer. Eventually, we wanted to renegotiate the price because me and my dad were talking and we're like, hey, nobody is buying at $600,000. Maybe people just don't want to buy at this price. We need to lower it, but then that's going to lower our fee. So we kind of got to renegotiate the price here. We went back to the house, took some more pictures, brought an investor friend of ours that's also a contractor, and he told us, yeah, you probably should renegotiate to probably 535. I called up the seller, the guy, and I said, hey, it needs a little more work than we thought. We're going to need to be at 535. And he told us, give me a day to think about it. So I was like, okay, cool. And I was fairly confident that he would take this deal because, again, he didn't have much time before his wife would sue him if he didn't sell this house. I get a call from the wife the next day, and she says, hey, he just signed a contract with someone else for $580,000. I said, what in the world is going on? We're at $570,000. He just signed an agreement for $580,000. This deal's not going to go through. He's not going to take our 535. And then I realized, I'm like, wait a minute. I've got a clause in my contract that says if he even talks to another buyer, he owes me 15% of the purchase price. That clause in my contract was called a non-circumvention clause, which basically gave me the exclusive right to buy the house, unless I signed it. And he was dumb enough not to read that clause in the contract, or maybe he just didn't care and didn't think that I would find out. So he didn't know that I knew that he signed this contract, but the wife told me. Again, she's on our side this entire time because she doesn't care how much money that he gets from the deal. She wants actually us to make as much money as we can because she honestly hates this guy. I told her, wait a bit, don't say anything to him. I'm not going to call him yet. Just send me over the contract when he signs it. He was basically just telling her, hey, I've got another contract at 580. Can you just sign it? And we're just waiting for him to sign it so that I can show it to him and say, hey, I have proof that you signed this contract. Like an hour later, she sends me the contract, and sure enough, it has his name with the same exact signature on my contract on the other contract for $5,000 more than we had it. So me and my dad get on the phone with the guy, and we tell him, hey, look, I have a contract that your ex-wife just sent me showing that you are under contract with someone else for $5,000 more than we are at $580,000. And you should have heard the fear in this guy's voice. Right when we said that, he was like, hold on, I'm trying to figure something out. But really, he's trying to figure out what to say on the phone because he doesn't know that he's been caught until now. He was like, I didn't sign anything. I was just looking for other options in case this didn't close. I didn't sign anything. I was just looking. And so I told him, I said, hey, I've got your signature right here. This signature has your middle name on it. Is this your middle name? I was like, how do I know your middle name if it's not on my contract? It's on this contract. I'll send it to you right now. I see your signature on it. And I said, regardless of if you signed anything or not, the fact that you were even talking to other buyers is in violation of the agreement. So I told him, hey, you either sign this contract right now at $535,000, which we told you yesterday, or I sue you for 15% of that purchase price, which would be $87,000. So either you take a $40,000 price cut and sign right now, or go ahead, you can sign with them, but I'll put a lien on the property and they won't even close with you. And then you'll owe me $87,000, and then also your wife will sue you. So sign the contract. I already told you. He was like, yeah, you're right. Send me over the contract. And he signed it right away. And we were able to get a $40,000 price reduction because he was dumb enough to sign a contract with someone else. This is why you must always make sure that you're protecting yourself in a contract, because this happens all the time. What he could have done is said, hey, I don't want to sell anymore. And it was in the inspection period that he was able to kind of just back out. He could have just backed out and then said, I don't want to sell anymore. And then he could have signed that other contract. But he was dumb enough to sign a contract while he's under contract. Like, what are you thinking? From that point on, from 535, it was pretty easy to find a buyer. Someone came back to us, another buddy of ours, and he said, hey, I can do it if you're at $570,000. I said, cool beans, sign right here. $35,000 was enough for me. It was more than I was going to make if I sold at $600,000, being under contract at 575. I was perfectly fine with that number. That's a lot of money. And during this entire period, I used a title company from my first deal to my second deal. And I'm telling you, the entire time during this second deal, even my first deal, I was not able to get a hold of my closing agent. Everything that I would speak about would have to be through email. I would literally call the title company. It would go to the receptionist. I said, hey, can you send me to my title agent? And they're like, yeah, let me send it. And every single time it would go to voicemail, or it would go to his assistant's voicemail. I literally could not get a hold of this guy, which is absolutely ridiculous. I'm never using that title company again. I will literally never use them again because the communication was just absolutely terrible. In the month and a half during this transaction, I literally talked to my title agent on the phone like 2 times. Besides that, everything was smooth until closing, up until about 2 days before we were ready to sign the paperwork for closing. The ex-wife calls me and she says, hey, I'm not signing this contract because my ex-husband has like $50,000 in taxes that he didn't pay from 2013 and 2018 when we were married. So if he closes on this deal, he's going to run away with that money, never pay the taxes, and then I'm going to be basically screwed. Why do I look so tired? Her almost exact words were, I'd rather put a bullet through my head than sign this contract. She said, I know you have that non-circumvention clause in your contract. You might just have to sue me because the only thing left for me is a bullet in my head. And I was like, what in the world is going on? It's not just her husband that's crazy. This lady is crazy too. I don't know why they were getting divorced. They're literally a match made in heaven. My dad said, okay, give me a second. I'll call you back. We end up calling her back, and my dad says, hey, I know you don't want to sign it, but it's actually best if you do sign it, and here's why. This guy has taxes from 2013 and 2018 that he didn't pay. And the fact that the IRS didn't put a lien on this house is actually a miracle. So them finding out that he's selling this house and that he has all of these back taxes, they're going to come after the guy. And also, he's the only one making money off of this sale. So you wouldn't be affected from this. He would. And if he's been hiding money from his taxes for all these years, he's probably hiding something bigger that you don't even know about. And she said, no, you're absolutely right. He does have more money that he's hidden. I've seen it, but I just haven't told the IRS about it. He definitely has other money that I can get him for. So we told her it's actually best if you do sign this contract, because once this house sells, the IRS is going to tick and they're going to see, oh, this guy just sold his house. He owes us $50,000. He has this money. We're going to come and get him for it. And she was like, yeah, I think you're right. Let me talk to my accountant and my lawyer and I'll get back to you. She comes back to us and she said, hey, I talked to them. You're right. They said the same thing. So I'll sign the closing document. Now we're good to go to closing. We had an issue where we almost had to sue the guy. We had an issue where we almost had to sue the lady. Hopefully, nothing bad happens up until the closing table. Closing day comes, everybody's ready to sign, but like I said earlier, I wasn't able to get a hold of the closing agent at all during this process. And there was no change day of closing. I still was not able to get a hold of this guy. It's like he completely ghosted me. Eventually, I got in contact with his manager and he was able to help us out, and then everything was good to go from there. We signed all the paperwork, they signed all the paperwork through an online notary, and everything was done. After that, it was only a matter of time before we got our money, which we ended up getting the next day. And in my bank account was $35,000. And it all came from one lead that I bought for $400 on iSpeed to Lead. I didn't have to spend hours every single day and multiple days every single week and weeks over months to get someone to want to sell their house. I just got a lead of someone who already wanted to sell, got their price, and got the contract done. From that point, me and my dad split $35,000, which is like $17,000 each, something like that, $18,000. But that's about it. I know it's a long video, but I show you exactly how I used the money from my first deal to get my second deal and how exactly, step by step, I got my second deal. In the end, me and my dad were happy. The guy was happy because now he doesn't have to get sued from his wife. Maybe a little less happy because it wasn't as much money as he thought he was going to get when he signed with another person. And the wife was ecstatic because now she's going after this guy with the IRS. And that's all that matters. Everybody was happy. Everyone made their money. We're all good to go and we can move on. And that's it. That's the exact layout about how I got my second deal, the money that I spent to get that second deal, and maybe all the money that I spent that I didn't need to get that deal. If you guys liked the video, please leave me a like below and subscribe to No Flipping Secrets. I lay out everything for you and I try to help in the best way that I can. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll answer every question that you guys got. We're trying to get to 40 subscribers by the end of the week. So let's hit that goal, guys. But thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting. It means a ton to me. I'll help out in any way that I can. So please ask away. And again, I'll leave videos in the description, Maximillian Dier's videos, and then also my video on how I got my first deal. And you can watch all of that there. But until then, this is Jesse with No Flipping Secrets. Peace!